All rise. Official court now in session. Honorable Stephen. Excuse me.
Three boys.
Thank you. Good boys. Man, sorry, went down the wrong hole.
We're fine. Thank you. Please be seated. All right. Good morning, everyone. We are on the record now on case CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. Prosecution's present as well as the defendant and defense counsel. We are at the stage of the trial where we've concluded the state's case in chief and the defense is ready to begin putting on its case. Before we have the jurors brought in, and they'll be here momentarily, they're lined up in the hall, but I did want to address one thing on the record outside the presence of the jurors. So before we concluded last week, as I'm sure the parties recall, we had after the state rested their defense motion for judgment of acquittal that the court addressed last Thursday, and the court did make a ruling on the record on that as it related to count 4 in the indictment. And upon further consideration, the court will maintain the ruling and deny the motion. In terms of going forward, having thought about addressing that issue with count 4, it's the court's determination at this point. It's going to be addressed with a jury instruction that is going to discuss the difference in the indictment and what the instruction will be as it relates to dates, and will permit jurors to consider those dates originally listed in the first indictment that was not supposed to have been amended on dates. So I'm going to have the instruction, prepared a draft of it, and counsel will be given an opportunity to review the instruction and determine whether or not they agree or whether there's any objection to the instruction in that manner of going forward as it relates to count 4. I'll also note, as we are getting to this stage of the proceedings, we are going to be getting to jury instruction soon. And in this case, it's a large undertaking. On the issue as it relates to the indictment, I just want to give credit where credit's due. And it was my staff attorney, Courtney Stallings, that did discover the issue with the indictment. And she's been working diligently towards also preparing these jury instructions. And I just want counsel to know that it's the court's ultimate duty to make sure the instructions are correct, but I would surely appreciate the assistance and help of counsel doing their best to make sure our instructions are all proper, that they're accurate, they adequately reflect the law and the evidence in this case. And while the court will ultimately approve those, your help and diligence, I hope you can be as efficient and good going through things as my staff attorney has been throughout this trial and assisting in many issues, including that important issue that was discovered last week. So the court is going to talk to counsel about when we'll be proposing a jury instruction conference, of course, before deliberations. And as we get towards the end of this trial, we'll watch the scheduling and how things unfold. And I'll let counsel know when we're going to be prepared to work through jury instructions before deliberations, but it is going to take time and it is complicated, this being a capital case. So if counsel could please keep that in mind as we move forward this week and going forward in the trial, I'd appreciate it. With that in mind, then I think we're ready to start with additional evidence with the defense case in chief. Mr. Pryor, is the defense going to be ready to call a witness once we bring in our jurors?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, counsel. So let's go ahead and I'll put one more thing on the record. I did receive the jury affirmation notices from all 17 of our jurors. They're all here today. And so we'll have them brought in and begin with the defense case in chief, please.
Judge, permission to approach the podium?
Yes.
All right, please. Resolve, President, counter for you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, we are on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. The state rested last week before the weekend. We're going to continue on in trial now with the defense case in chief. The court would note the jurors are all properly seated, and the court has received the juror affirmations signed by each one of our jurors for following the court's continuing instruction as we broke for the weekend. So thank you again, each of you, for following that instruction as you have throughout this trial. Your time and efforts are very much appreciated, I'm sure, by the parties in the court as well. And so we're ready to commence now with the calling of the first witness for the defense case. Mr. Pryor, who's the witness going to be?
Emma Murray, Judge.
Very well. We'll go ahead and have the witness brought in, please.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, to the microphone, and then your first working picture.
Thank you.
May I, Judge?
Yeah, before we get started, I was just sitting here considering whether or not the exclusionary rule applies to this witness, and I don't believe it does. Is that correct?
That's correct, Judge. But in the issue of precaution, my subpoenas stated that nobody was to observe any of the proceedings, and I will inquire Ms. Murray as to whether she observed any of the proceedings anyway, Judge.
Okay, I think it's just fair on questioning for examination on Director Cross, but I won't make any inquiry on the exclusionary order. So with that, I'll just remind the witness then you are under oath for your testimony. You can inquire on direct if you'd like, Mr. Pryor.
Would you state your name, spell your last name for the record for me, please?
Emma Murray, Murray.
And Emma, there's a gentleman to my left in a blue shirt at the desk over there. Do you recognize who that is?
Yes, that's my father.
Now, I noticed that your last name is Murray. Can you explain that to me, please?
I was married and changed my name.
You are married,
Yes, I'm married.
and your husband is Joseph Murray?
Yes,
Did you receive a subpoena from either the prosecutor or the defense in this particular case?
I received a subpoena from both.
And at no point you were called for the prosecution, is that correct?
I was not.
And you did receive a subpoena from my office to appear as well.
I did.
And in that subpoena, did it indicate that we would rather you not review the proceedings as part of this, as part of your testimony in this case?
Yes, and I did not.
I want to talk a little bit about how often we've had an occasion to talk about this case, you and I. And can you explain to the jury how often we've spoken about this case?
I've talked to John maybe 3 times.
And last night we met prior to your testimony today.
That's correct.
At any time, did I indicate to you any way you're supposed to say or anything that you should say or were supposed to say as part of your testimony?
You told me just to tell the truth.
Okay, and you're prepared to tell the truth today.
I am.
I want to talk a little bit about where you're living right now. And where do you live right now?
I live in the house that was my parents'.
Okay. And at this point, you're not aware of any financial situation. Is it true that you're not aware of any financial situation between myself and your father regarding that house?
That's correct.
And you don't have any personal knowledge of anything that is any arrangement between your father and I. Is that correct?
Yeah, I made an arrangement with my father. I don't know what he's decided with you.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your mother's health. What can you tell me in general about your mother's health in the last year or so?
Her health started declining. I was really worried about it. She, well, she'd always been one to be able to meet the demands of daily life without being exhausted. And she started going to bed at like before dinner some nights. It would be like 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. And she would sleep in too if given the opportunity. So suddenly needing to sleep a lot was very confusing to me.
Are you aware of any health issues that your mother may or may not have had?
I, at the time, was not. Since her passing, I've been diagnosed with sleep apnea, and my maternal grandfather also has sleep apnea, and uh, she's the generational link between. So I wonder if she did. That's something that obviously we can't investigate at this time, but symptoms like daytime tiredness and not getting restful sleep seem like they would fit what speculation.
It's sustained.
Okay. Were you aware of any other health maladies that your mother may have suffered from?
She had anemia.
Okay. Were you aware of any medications that your mother may have taken?
She preferred herbal supplements. She did take the generic form of the medication Prozac.
Okay.
That was the only prescribed medication that she regularly took.
Were there any non-prescription medications or herbs or supplements that you're aware of?
Oh, definitely. She really liked using colloidal silver was her favorite. It's
Slow down for me. Colloidal silver?
colloidal silver. It's distilled water with particles of silver in it to the part per million. It tastes like you're drinking water out of a metal water bottle, and it can cure everything.
Okay. And
I say that with a smile because you really should go to the doctor instead of drinking.
Calls for speculation.
World.
go ahead.
She would use colloidal silver as an antiviral, is what she called it. So anytime she felt under the weather, she would take colloidal silver and she would.
This calls for hearsay.
World.
Go ahead.
I witnessed her drinking it and she would encourage other people in our household to do so.
Were you a consumer of colloidal silver?
I was.
Okay. How'd that work for you?
It tastes nasty.
Okay. Did it help you in curing any ailments that you may have had?
I don't know.
Were there other things that your mother did in terms of remedies to resolve other issues she may have had?
She bruised really easily and she used arnica gel.
Okay.
Arnica is a plant that helps with bruising. She had it in gel form.
And when you say she bruised easily, can you elaborate on that?
If she were to bump her hip on the counter when she was walking by, she would get a massive bruise from that. Even things like carrying a heavier load of groceries where the bag pressed on her arm would leave a bruise.
Okay. Okay. I want to go to the date of October 18th of 2019. Do you recall that day?
Yes,
Okay. And on the 18th, you were, and before I get there, your mother was employed at a school. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Now, in terms of the physical size of that school, can you describe the physical size of that elementary school for me, please?
This was a smaller elementary school built in a rural area. The area is growing, but the school is still small. Right now, it houses 3 grades.
Okay. So if there was discussion about having to travel within the school, would that be a significant distance that you would have to travel within this school?
No, I was also employed there at the time, and it was not a hassle to walk from one side of the building to the other.
Okay. And at the time, I'm going to go back to October 18th. And on the 18th, was there some sort of an event or occurrence that was taking place at the school?
The next week, there was going to be a book fair. It was going to be held in the library where my mom worked, and she needed to prepare her workspace to become a store. The community was going to be coming in and buying books, and so she wanted to move her personal items and personal books so that way they wouldn't get sold or stolen.
And in terms of distance from in this small school you described, how far was your classroom to where your mother's library was?
There were two different locations where she would work. One was a computer lab that was right next to my classroom. Um, some people didn't know that, but they shared a wall. You would have to walk around the corner for the entryway, but I could hear her teaching and she could hear me. Her library was just the next hallway over. It was
Okay.
hardly a walk.
When you say hardly a walk, did it encompass miles,
No,
feet?
feet.
Okay. Now, in terms of interaction with other members of the school, how would you describe your mother's personality?
My mother was an introvert at the core. She could be friendly and small talk with people, but in general, I noticed she didn't confide in people. I also observed at that school, we, like many public schools, needed a lot more employees than we had. So most people were overburdened with work, especially support staff. And so she really didn't have time to visit. Even during lunchtime, when you would typically think someone could sit down and chat with a neighbor, she was helping students go through the lunch line and pay.
Would it have been your mother's habit to openly discuss her health issues with members of her school staff?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
At any time were you present when your mother discussed any of her health issues with other members of the school staff?
Any chance that I got to, I would go visit her in her classroom, and I never observed her talking about her health with our coworkers. She seemed pretty embarrassed about.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Did you observe your mother in terms of her interactions with other members of the school staff?
I did.
And what did you observe?
I did not observe her talking about her health.
Okay. Would you describe your mother as a very private person?
Yes,
Would you agree that it wasn't her habit to want to miss work?
she wanted to go every day.
Was that her work ethic or was there some other underlying reason?
Her work ethic, she was also not a salaried employee, so she was paid by the hour.
So it was important financially from your perspective that she work?
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about the book fair on the 18th and the preparations that were involved. Did you personally observe anything as far as your mother preparing for the book fair?
She loaded her personal belongings in boxes and loaded them heavier than perhaps she should have, because I observed her walking down the hallway and she was resting the box against her body, on her arms, holding it back and walking with a lot of effort. I was in a meeting and I actually stepped out to help her because it was way too heavy for her.
And on that occasion, what vehicle did she drive to the school to load those boxes and unload those boxes?
She drove my parents' Dodge Dakota that day.
Okay. And then I want to go back to approximately 2017 forward. Who was the primary driver of the Dodge Dakota?
My father.
Okay. And what would your mother be driving?
She would be driving a Chevy Equinox. She always liked to drive the nicer of the two vehicles.
Now, there were exceptions to your mother and father switching vehicles. Would that be fair?
That's correct.
But primarily, your dad was the one driving the Dodge Dakota. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Eventually, that truck was sold to who?
My husband and I.
Okay. Do you still have that truck?
Yes.
Your mother would use a common phrase in the last year of her life in terms of an assessment of how she would feel. And Yeah.
Yes,
Objection here calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
were there occasions when you would, well, Judge, I think I'll move on from there. That's okay. I want to talk a little bit about the Fitbit. Your mother had a Fitbit, is that right?
yes, she had a wristwatch that would count her steps.
Okay. And at this point, was it her habit to use that Fitbit on a regular basis?
Yes, she would wear it during the day and then charge it at night
Okay.
when she was sleeping.
So she was counting her steps during the day as part of that Fitbit.
Yes,
And is it your assessment that your mother physically was was in a fit state?
but no, part of why she wanted the Fitbit was to increase her physical fitness.
Okay. She was working on her physical fitness.
Yes, she had one, I had one, and she bought my dad one, but he wouldn't wear it.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your husband Joe's parents. Who are they?
Ed and Charlene Murray.
Okay. And was there some sort of a competition between your mother and Ed and Charlene Murray?
If you make an account in Fitbit, you can add friends. They're people that you know, and you can compete with them to see who takes more steps during the day.
Okay. And were you aware of any competition that was going on between Ed and Charlene Murray and your mother?
Yes, my